Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahara Rose DeVore, the founder of the Travel Coach Network and the creator and instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today, I have one of our own guest members of the Travel Coach Network as a guest on the podcast today. We have Jabulile Ngwenya. She is a travel writer, a sustainable and anti-oppression specialist, and founder of Travel Africa with Jabu, a travel coaching business that helps grief-stricken travelers find and give connection, passion, and conversation through community-based travel initiatives in Africa. After experiencing tremendous personal loss, she realized how connection with people can open a broken heart to the spirit of abundance. She's traveled to 18 countries on the continent and several more abroad, now uses her personal experiences and industry research to help people have more transformative and sustainable travel experiences. Jabulile is a published author, travel writer, creative content creator whose work has been published in Lonely Planet and Time Magazine. Jabu, thank you so much for joining us today on the TCN podcast.
Hi, Sahara. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's so lovely to have you here. You've been a part of the TCN for a while now, but I love what you do. So I'm so excited to have you share that with others. But first, can you tell us more about yourself, your background, and where your passion for travel stemmed from?
Sure. I mean, as I tell you about myself, I think from the moment I was born is when I started traveling. I was born in South Africa, and but during that time it was apartheid. So my parents went into exile to Zimbabwe, which is just the neighboring country. And right after my mom gave birth to me, she moved me to Zimbabwe to stay with my dad, and she went back home because she had my sister on the way. So she was pregnant and she wanted to give birth to my sister in South Africa. And basically, that's where I started traveling from the time I was a baby. And I traveled a lot with my parents back and forth between Zimbabwe and South Africa. And even when I started traveling solo is probably when I was about 10 years old, when my parents would send me during the school holidays in Zimbabwe, and they'd send me to South Africa. And that's when I learned how to travel solo. And I started writing, travel writing. I was never going to get into the industry of travel. I just knew I loved travel. But even though I studied English literature and language at university, it wasn't something that I really thought about as a career until I met my mentor, renowned travel writer Pat Hopkins, who passed away over 12 years ago. And he got me into the travel industry. And he was very encouraging. And he said to me, just go for it. And he held my hand right at the beginning, and he just pushed me. And from there, I just went, and I decided just to discover what travel holds for me. And that was amazing.
Is there a trip or an experience in particular that you feel like made a really big impact on you or your life in some way?
I think it would be the time when I was 10 years old, when I had to travel for the first time on my own. I think I will always remember that. I remember my mom, it was my sister and I, and I'm the eldest. So for me, it really feels like I was traveling by myself because I had to do everything. And my sister, you know, when you're the older one, they just follow you. The younger siblings just follow you, everything that you do. And I remember my mom had bought us matching Tog bags. And she said to us, okay, you are going to travel. We had to take the bus, by the way, from Zimbabwe all the way to South Africa. It's about a 16-hour journey. And you still have to, when the bus gets to the border, you have to get off at the border. And you can imagine as a 10-year-old with a 7-year-old sibling, and you're getting off the bus at the border, a very busy border post. And you get off, you go into the office, and they stamp your passports, and then you have to go back to the bus, and they have to open up your bags. And I remember here we are with our matching blue bags, and we had to take them from the back of the bus, and we're opening them up. And that for me was, I think, the first time that I really knew I could do it, that I really knew I could do anything, really. And I think that has been instilled by my parents from a very young age. like I say, from the time my parents were just like, Jabu, you going to Zimbabwe to be with your dad. And they always taught me to be independent and, just to think freely. And yeah, I think when I was 10 years old is probably the most, I wouldn't say historic, but the most pressing trip that I've ever had.
Yeah, as you're describing that scenario, I mean, I've crossed so many borders as an adult, by
Yeah,
foot and by bus, and it's the same process like you mentioned. And I can't fathom how at 10 and 7 years old, you guys were able to do that with such confidence, and ease. It's intimidating and confusing for
yeah,
adults sometimes. Like, where do we go?
yeah,
What do we do now? And I mean, that just shows the strength that you had. And travel can do that for you. It can
yeah,
it shows you what you're capable of, and has you face different challenges that you can figure out how you can overcome or manage or cope through as well. So I love that you shared one from when you were a child, because I think travel is really important for children as well,
absolutely.
to be able to, learn so many different skills, and, the independence that travel can bring you, which is why a
Mm,
lot of people do travel too. But
yeah.
what took you from this world of loving to travel and getting into travel writing to now wanting to help others when it comes to travel?
Oh, wow. It's been a journey, and I think it's been a journey in the making for the past 12 years. Um, I'd never heard of travel coaching before until I started researching, all the careers in travel, and that's when I came across you. But, when I say it's been a journey in the making for the past 12 years, and that's because 12 years ago, like I mentioned, Patrick passed away by suicide. And that was a very, very life-changing moment for me. And over the past 12 years, a lot has happened. Recently, I just lost my best friend. She passed away unexpectedly. And I remember when I was doing the travel coaching program with the Travel Coach Network, we had to choose a niche and decide exactly what it is that we wanted to do with what we were learning. And for a long time, I wasn't sure until I really started delving into my own experiences and what I had been going through. And I realized through every part of every trauma that I've ever had. Sorry, Sarah, I lost you there.
You're okay. Why don't you start back with from every trauma that you've ever had?
Okay. So I was just saying that from every trauma that I've had, especially over the last 12 years, when I started to make sense of it, I realized that every turn that travel had helped me. And you never think about it that way, though. You never think about, when you going through something, you never think, okay, I'm just going to travel and it's going to help me. For me, I remember one of the most profound moments where I realized travel is so important was when it was a few years after Patrick died, and I had just broken up with a boyfriend. I'll never forget that. And literally just left on the doorstep and just told, just get out of my life. And I was so bereft. And I thought, you know what, F this. I am going to go to Cambodia. And it was literally, I think, the Monday when I was told to F off. And then Wednesday, I'd booked the ticket. I had gotten my visa and I got on the plane and I went to Cambodia with no plan. I just knew that I was going to Thailand. When I get to Thailand, I'm going to cross the border, and from there, I'm going to catch a taxi into Cambodia. But one of the most amazing parts of that trip, I remember, was when I was on the bamboo train, and it's just me, and there's the two guides, one in front of me and one at the back. And I'm sitting, and the sun is beating on top of me, and it's so hot. And I just started crying, and I could see all the rice paddies around me, and all these oxen, these white oxen as well, just browsing and grazing in the paddies. And I'll never forget that when I started crying, but it wasn't tears of sadness, it was tears of joy, because I knew at that moment that I was going to be okay. I knew it. And that for me that is what I pulled out from all those experiences. I knew that was what I wanted to give people when it comes to healing, using travel as a healing magnet. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Well, first of all, can you just briefly just share for those who don't know you who Patrick is, so people are aware of when you say Patrick?
Sorry, may you repeat that?
Can you share for those who aren't aware of who don't know you yet? I mean, a lot of people in the network know you, but who is Patrick?
Okay, so Patrick was started off as my teacher and then became my partner, and we were engaged for a while. This was 2009, and we were engaged, and he was also my mentor. He's a very well-known South African travel writer. And I met him, he was running a travel writing school in South Africa in conjunction with the South African Tourism Board. And we started off as friends. And then from there, you know, he started mentoring me. And we were together we knew each other for about 4 years. That's only 4 years, but his impact on me is so profound. To this day, I still take whatever he says, whatever he taught me, everything that I've learned as an adult about traveling, I learned from him, because he'd already been in the industry for many, many years before I met him. So everything he knew, he taught me. And yeah, so
Yeah,
that's Patrick. Yeah,
so he was one of your loves of your life.
yeah,
And I know that with his passing, he would want you to travel. He would want you to
absolutely.
go and find yourself again. And so bringing it back to what you were talking about, you made it to the rice fields. Um, what do you think it was in that moment when you had those tears of joy and you realized that this is how I want to help other people feel this as well? What do you think it was about that trip? Not only that trip, but being in that environment and going through that experience, what do you think it was that was able to help you feel that way, to empower you to feel that way?
Uh, it's something that I use in my coaching program called the abundance mindset, and I just want to explain it this way. On another trip in Mozambique, I had been working, I was working as a deputy editor of a travel magazine, and I was working really hard, and I was overworked, and I was burnt out. And I remember my friends and I had gone on a trip for a week to Mozambique, and I was just feeling so low from all the work and all the hardships that I'd been going through. And I remember I was sitting at the beach, I was lying on the lounger, and I closed my eyes and I just had this vision. And I felt that I could see myself right at the bottom of the ocean, right at the surface. And I was in a cage, and it was a prison cell, and it had these bars. And I remember the door opened in this vision. I remember the cell door opened, and it opened automatically. The key was on the outside, and it just opened. And I remember walking out from this cave, where the cell was in the cave. And I remember walking out, or swimming out rather, and I looked up to the surface of the water, and I could see the sun shining through, beaming through the water surface. And that for me was such a profound understanding of what abundance is. And I always talk about this in that people don't understand that when they go through loss, they are immediately overwhelmed by what they are feeling, the sadness, the trauma, the loss, the suffering. And they don't understand that at that point, when you're going through all those things, you feel that someone else is doing it to you. And of course, understandably, of course, you would feel that way, you know, especially if something is coming at you. But you don't understand that you have the power to get out of that. Maybe not immediately. And of course, when it's a really traumatic event, not immediately, but it does take some time. And when you start to understand that you are the one who has the key to get yourself out of that, then you begin to understand what the abundance mindset is. For me, abundance, and this is why that's what I love about merging abundance with travel, because abundance is not just about money. And I know a lot of people think about it that way. Abundance is about looking around in the world that you are in right now. It could be your backyard. You know, we talk about travel, a lot of people think, oh, get on a plane or a train and you need to go somewhere really far. No. You know, one of the things I start with in my program is, let's start with the backyard, your own backyard, whether that means you talk to somebody new, whether that means you go to a new shopping center and you go into a new aisle, an aisle you've never visited before. You know, it's about looking for the new in every single thing. Abundance is about saying, okay, it's getting to a new place and saying, oh, wow, you know what? I've never tried this packet of Rice Krispies before. Let me try that. Abundance is about saying, you know what? I've seen this man every time I come to the shopping center at the corner, I see him, but I've never spoken to him before. And therefore you speak to him. Abundance is saying, oh, you know what? It's recognizing that water is coming out of a tap and you can, you know, take a cup and pour water and, you know, refill your coffee jar, whatever it is, you're always looking for the new. So abundance is realizing that your world is so much bigger than what you think it is. Because right now you could be in a place and you're sitting there and you're thinking, all I have right now is this room that I'm in, and that's all. There's nothing else. You know, I have no friends, I have nothing. But when you start to break it down little by little, when you start to realize that I have this, I have a flushing toilet, I have friends, I have food for tonight, I have the air I breathe, that to me is abundance. And the thing about travel is it makes that reality so much more poignant, because it comes at you so fast. You know, when the plane takes off on time, you say, thank God. When you get there safely, you say, thank you so much that I arrived. So you may not say it to the universe, but you're just like, oh, thank God I'm already here. When you get to your hotel and they say, oh, wow, welcome, Ms. Ngwenya, your room is ready for you. And you get there and they say, oh, we've upgraded you. You know, those little things, when you get there and you see breakfast and it's all the food that you have not eaten for the past 6 months and you see it right in front of you and you're just like, wow, I love this. And that's, for me, is abundance. And that's what I try and use within the program, is because travel makes these things so clear to you every single moment that you're on the road and you're not familiar with what it is that you're familiar with on a day-to-day basis. That's when you realize that there's so much more. And then when you take those little steps and then you realize, maybe I'm no longer, or maybe I can get out of this prison cell that I've put myself in. So that is, yeah, that's abundance to me. And that's why I want to help people.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, grief and loss is not something that that's not easy to work through,
No.
but travel sure can be a powerful vessel to help people through that. And I've heard that through many different people who love to travel after grief, or use travel, even if it was just like a natural reaction, they traveled. I mean, I know for me, I mean, when I lost my dog that I loved so much and he had to get put
Mm,
down,
mm,
I turned back to traveling. I
yeah,
didn't want to, of course, it was a sense of escape, but it was also a sense of, I feel so sad right now. Travel makes me feel happy in so
absolutely.
many different ways. And I was able to
Absolutely.
go and involve myself in, take my love for my dog and go to places where there were other dogs on the streets and I can feed the dog, like little
Mm-hmm.
things that fulfill you. Travel is able to bring that to you. And I love that you're talking about the abundance, because yes, I mean, traveling, we are exposed to so many different environments and people and ways of living and ways of thinking, and just the gratitude that we have for what we do have and what we don't have. And we often forget that, and
Yeah,
travel can really humble
yeah,
us, and it can really put things in perspective for us. Um,
absolutely.
and love that that's what you decided, that you want to empower others, because after a loss, or going through grief, no matter what that it stemmed from, can be
Yeah,
a very traumatizing, paralyzing time in someone's life, where
absolutely.
they don't see
Yeah.
that anything's better, anything good is going to come
Yes.
to me in my life. Like there's no
Absolutely.
light at the end of the tunnel. Because
Absolutely.
I can
Yeah.
imagine if I lost the love of my life, or I lost a loved one that, a parent or something like that, I would feel that way too. I would feel like, what purpose do I have in my life now that they're gone? And I know
Mm.
it's not a healthy mindset, but it's so powerful that you're able to help people kind of see that light at the end of the tunnel and use travel as that vessel to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just going back to Patrick's death, I mean, I was literally talking to Patrick the night before he died, and then wake up the next morning and you just get this news that he's dead. And that was so it changed my life. I always talk about my life as before Patrick, with Patrick, and after Patrick. And it changed my life so profoundly. And I never fathomed how I would ever get out of it. I never thought to myself, I'm ever going to get out of this mess. It was paralyzing, like you say. But then little by little, I remember just after he died, my best friend decided to take me on a trip. It was literally 3 months after he died, and she said, let's go to the Seychelles. And we went to the Seychelles for a few days, and that was so mind-blowing. I actually laughed. I never thought I would laugh again. I laughed, and I had so much fun with her. And we met so many different people. And I mean, not everything went according to plan, but that's the beauty of travel. And it really helped me over the next few years to really focus on what it is I want to do. Of course, I had moments where I broke down and I thought, oh God, it's over. I can never do this. I don't want to do this. But when you think back to that experience that you had in the Seychelles and the ocean and the people that you met and the food and the moments where things didn't go according to plan and you laugh about them, that is when you really have to dig deep and realize that there's more. There is always more. There is always more, and you have to reach out for it. And one of the things I do want to say though, that as a travel coach, I want to make it clear that my job is not to be a therapist, and I don't want to be a therapist. It isn't to make everything okay for you and to help you navigate through those difficult emotions. You do need to see a therapist for those very difficult emotions. This is when you are ready, when you feel that, okay, you know what, I've cried as much as I can cry right now. I just need a little bit something extra to help me just get over this hurdle. And of course, you'll cry after. It's not going to change everything right away. But what it's going to do is just give you the gumption to take the next step. And that is very important, is to take the next, and also to empower you. It's so important for people to understand, for you to feel empowered within your own life. Because when something comes at you from the outside, you feel that your power has been taken away. But then when you start to see that you can do it, then you empower yourself. It's important for you to remember that you are powerful, you are abundant, and you can do it. That is very, very important, especially after a loss.
Yeah, definitely. And I thank you so much for bringing that up. We say that travel is like a source of therapy, but it's so true. As a travel coach, we talk about in the certification program, you have to be able to define what you do and have those disclaimers, because therapists are licensed medical mental health professionals. And unless,
Yes.
I mean, there are many of those that are in the Travel Coach Network, but if you're not, you have to make it clear, and no matter what type of business that you have, that
Yeah.
you are not offering medical advice, legal
Mm,
advice, or
mhm.
any financial advice, anything that you don't actually have credentials for. It's really important for anyone
Absolutely.
listening to this that has a travel related business, and especially in the coaching industry in general. Life coaches
Mhm.
also, there's that fine line with what they can do. So the coaching
Mm,
world, you have
mm,
to protect yourself with your business and be very clear with your
mm.
clients, and then
Yes.
set that up and say, if that is that support, I suggest that you see a professional for that. So if you do see therapy,
Absolutely.
you do get legal advice from you know, a legal team. So you have to do that in your business. It's very, very important.
Absolutely.
But then it's also really great that sometimes it takes just someone to give you that little idea or nudge or empowerment
Mm,
that, you know, it's like talking to a friend. Like I can go on this trip and it maybe can do something for me. So let's start talking about Africa. You've traveled
mm,
around the world, so you could
mhm.
obviously help people travel anywhere that you know, they would want to go or that you love. But why Africa? What is it about Africa that you can share with people that is just so powerful?
Um, it's the electricity on the continent. It's the electricity. I think, we all know this. Africa is the most diverse continent on the planet. Um, there's so much, and one of the things that I also want to make very clear is I always want to connect people with people. And I find I've been to a lot of countries, and I find there's nowhere else in the world where people are as engaging, as friendly, as dynamic, as magnetic as African people. They always want to help you. They always, okay, a lot of the time they are in your business as well. Um, but it's the music, it's the culture, it's the art, it's the heritage. It comes with a lot. You're not just sitting down and having a conversation with someone. They're bringing a whole world with them. When you talk to someone, they bring in a whole world with them. When you talk to someone, they are bringing their history, they're bringing their families, they bring in their communities into the conversation with you. And that's what I love about this continent. You know, it's so many languages, so many people, so many different types of foods. I mean, this is the birthplace of mankind, I mean, so it's reported that this is the birthplace of mankind. And I love that. I love Africa because nothing is ever the same. No 2 days are ever the same. I mean, right now I've been in Zanzibar now I'm going into my third month in Tanzania. And I can tell you nothing is ever the same. I mean, when we started this conversation, I said to you, can you hear any noise in the background? Because right now I'm staying in a village, and just across the road from me is a place, it's a house, and they just playing music, and they're playing it really loud. And I actually had to close the door, but it's really nice, very local music. It's not something you can dance to, but it's just really, really lovely music. And that's what it is. Every day is so different. I mean, tomorrow you can find that maybe one of the neighbors is burning something next to a house, whatever it is. There's always something different. I mean, also, when it comes to diversity, it's not just the people. I mean, we have the wildlife, we have, oh gosh, the nature, the environment. There's so much to learn. And I mean, we don't have it perfect, but also a big thing for me is the misconception of Africa is a big thing as to why I want to work within Africa. I know uh, there's the danger of a single story, as Chimamanda talks about a lot, and that's the problem with Africa. The narrative is changing so slowly. I know it is changing, but it's changing so slowly. And one of the things I would love is I want to connect people who are going through loss with people within the local communities. And I don't mean, a lot of the time what happens when people come to Africa, and I know it happens around the world, but especially Africa and probably Asia, is that there is this voyeuristic ideal of travel. So you come in, you get into a really fancy car or fancy bus, and you literally drive around and you look out the windows and you see, oh, what are the locals doing, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, what I want to change is that come here, let us put you with another person or other people or other communities, get to talking, have conversations. And this comes back again to abundance, because that's when you realize there's so much more happening in the world than what's happening in your mind. Not that what's happening in your mind is not important. Of course, it's very important, but just to get out of that a little bit and realize there's so much more happening. You'll learn so much when you come to the continent. And no, let me tell you, we have 54 countries, none of them are alike. There is this African culture, but no one country is the same as the other country. You have different languages everywhere. Right now, I'm in Tanzania. I'm trying to learn Swahili, but neighboring, that would be Mozambique. They speak very little Swahili, and now they speak Portuguese. And then you go into South Africa, where you have 11 official languages, and then you go to Zimbabwe, which is right next door to South Africa, and it's a completely different environment. So that's what I love about Africa. It's dynamic, it's colorful. I love the color, the vibrancy, the people, the food. Nothing is ever the same.
You sure are selling Africa to everyone. That is one continent I haven't spent much time on, and it's something that I really want to do one day. I've been to I haven't been to the heart of Africa. I've been to South Africa and then Northern Africa, but there's just
Yes,
so many countries in Africa,
yes.
and like you said, the diversity. And I hear all these wonderful stories of what is there and what you can experience. And I love that you mentioned, though, and this is so common in the travel industry with tours, is you get on a bus or everything is private, everything is a private
Yes,
excursion, and it's
yes.
a private transportation. So if you're on a bus, you're in a shuttle and they're taking you through a village, but you just
Mm,
go through and just look with your
yeah.
eyes. But I feel like that's, to me, and this is something that I've always had an issue with in the travel industry, is
Mm,
that the travel industry wants people to travel. They want people to
mm,
get out of their comfort zone and go spend money in other countries and
yeah.
drive tourism. But when you bring ease and comfort and safety to people's
Yeah.
guided tours, or all-inclusive tours, or whatever it might be, where they're
Mm,
saying,
mm,
you're keeping in a group or you're staying within the gated community, you're giving the impression that it's unsafe, and you're giving the
yes.
impression that you have to stay in this zone, otherwise it's
Mm-hmm.
just not a safe environment. But
Mm-hmm.
that's so opposite. And I think that's why a
Yeah.
lot of people who travel, like backpackers or solo travelers, or people go off the beaten paths, or,
Yes.
go to places that aren't tourist destinations, that we
Yes.
have such a different perspective because we've
Yes.
been immersed in these situations where you're forced to talk with people, you're forced to ask for help, you're forced to ask for directions and to sit and eat with someone else, or to stay in someone else's home, or to venture down a village road or something like that, where it's like that those experiences teach you that the world is a very kind place, and it's filled
Absolutely.
with a
Yeah.
lot of really kind people, that
Yes.
it doesn't have to be as scary as the industry or the news or whatever teaches you that it can be, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally, just as you were talking, I thought about a trip that I took to West Africa. So this was in 2017. I decided that I was going to visit the region of West Africa. And I think I went to 5 countries there. And I asked one of my friends, he lives in Germany. And I said to him, listen, I'm going to West Africa. You want to come with me? And again, he was like, is it safe? Because of course, there's this media onslaught of that the West Africa is really unsafe because of ISIS and, Al-Shabaab and all of those things, and the terrorism and, political instability. And I said to him, the only way we're going to find out is if we go, because, if we stay here and just listen to the news, then we're never going to know. So getting the visas for some of the countries was absolutely easy, got them very quickly. And funny enough, more so for him in Germany than for me in South Africa. That was very funny. And I mean, that's another conversation altogether. But he got his visas very quickly, and we met up in Senegal. And we traveled for 3 months around West Africa. And I have to say, that when he left, we arrived in Senegal and we left from Senegal. And when he left, he said to me, it is nothing like what I imagined it to be. Not one day ever in the 3 months. We went to Benin, we went to Senegal, we went to Togo. It was Burkina Faso. And I've just forgotten the other country that we went to. And not one time, Ghana, not one time did we have any problems. Not one time did we have any threats. Not one time did anyone steal from us. Not even, and a lot of the time we weren't flying from country to country. We were driving. We had drivers take us, and these are private taxis. Just guys that we meet on the street, and we like, can you drive us to the border? Blah blah blah. We get there, and we have to get out the car, and we have to go into the border post and have our passport stamped and what. Not one time did we have any sort of problems. And after 3 months, he went back to Germany, I went back to South Africa, and everything was completely fine. And I think that is the issue. A lot of people see what's happening in the media. And again, going back to that idea of a single story, is I want people to come here so that you can go out and tell the rest of the world that it is not what you think it is, especially if you're having these conversations. In Travel Africa with Jabu, I talk about it's coaching. I talk about the 4 C's, coaching, so that you can build connections through conversations, and in the end have community. That's what it's all about, is to have community. And after that, when you leave, whatever country you're leaving from, you're going back home and you're saying, this is what I encountered, this is what I felt, and what you see in the media is nothing like what you imagine it to be, because it's not. A lot of the time, and it's really, really heartbreaking when you hear those stories of, oh, what about the children starving in Africa? There's children starving everywhere. It's not just Africa. Africa's a lot of different faces. There's wealth, there's poverty, there's beauty, there's everything. So that's what I really want, is to change that narrative. And I know I can't do it alone. So I'm bringing up all the people who want to travel. You doing it with me. So that's my call.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up because it's so true. I mean, I've been to places where my friends and family will say, "Are you sure you want to go there?" Going into Colombia, they're like, "That's just not safe." Going into Mexico, even though I've been to Mexico many times, my grandmother is from there. It's just
Yeah.
not safe. Or the first time I went to the Middle East, or Morocco, or anywhere in the world, like people have these same ideas, and I always say that, I don't think it's luck that I haven't ever had anything, and I've been to over
Yeah.
84 countries, that no one has ever stole from me, hurt me, threatened me, nowhere. And it's not luck. It's from a woman's perspective, in my opinion, it's obviously you have to have a certain heightened awareness of your surroundings and
Yes.
your
Yeah.
belongings, or at least your valuables. You have to be smart and use your best judgment on certain
Yes.
situations. A lot of the horror stories that I heard from other travelers, I found that little glimmer of, oop, well, you probably shouldn't have done that. You probably shouldn't have gone to the
Yeah.
ATM in Amsterdam at 4 a.m, intoxicated, and an outdoor, and got robbed at knife point. I've heard all these stories, but it's like, when you travel and you go these routes, and we're not saying to everyone you have to drive across the border and walk borders and stuff too. I mean, travel looks different for everyone, and everyone has a different idea of how they want to travel. But when you can go to places that you don't, that aren't these tourist destinations that you feel are the safe choices, this world is filled with
Yeah.
so many beautiful destinations.
Yeah.
You gain trust, and you gain compassion, and you gain empathy and understanding and acceptance of
Yes.
this world. And so when you're saying that, yes, it's super easy, especially people living in the States, is that we've been in our bubble of, listening to the news and telling us this country is not safe and this is going on in Israel. And, I remember having these ideas when I was going to Israel, like, am I going to be safe? Is it going to be okay? And I was like, this is one of my favorite places I've ever been. But I say that I feel like if everyone traveled just a little bit, the world would be a kinder place, because you are now exposed to what it's like. And also you can share that perspective and give people another perspective other than what they hear in the media or in the news as well too, because that could be it's very damaging and very toxic to people
Absolutely.
accepting and understanding all of our differences.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you totally. But it's gonna take time. And I know that,
Yeah.
I think, you were talking about the travel industry in general. And I find a lot of, honestly, because I work within the African continent, I find here in Africa, a lot of the time, they don't want to change. I've had conversations. Another issue also here, and it's something that I've been meaning to write a story about, is the fact that a lot of the tourism industry is owned by people who are not from Africa. So a lot of the time, it is white families who have been here, whether they just arrived recently or whether their families arrived during colonial era, but they're the ones who really own the travel industry here in Africa. And it's really disheartening to have, when you try and have those conversations with them and you feel like nothing is changing, because a lot of the time you'll be told, oh, but we've built a local school, we've built a local hospital, and we've got the waiting staff, and we putting people, we source from the local communities. But my thing, and this is a question I always have, is, but wait a minute, you taking from the local community, as you say, but a lot of these people are at the bottom. They're at the grounds level. They're not executive level. They're not managerial level. You're not allowing them to make decisions. At the end of the day, this business belongs to your family, and that's where you're keeping it. You're not allowing anyone within the local community to have shares within that business. And I mean, this is also one of the things I found, as I say, I've been here in Zanzibar, is that a lot of the land is literally being sold to foreigners. Number one, because the local people need money. And so it's easy money. When you get a foreigner coming to you and saying to you, I'm going to give you $100,000 for your land, which is really close to the beach. What are you going to say? Are you really going to say, no, you're going to take that $100,000, because where else are you going to get it from? Because I mean, here, not a lot of people have money. So these are the issues that I find, that these are the discussions that I know we need to have in the industry. But the thing is, it's all well and good for you and me and other people who are in the industry to have these conversations. But I think also the demand has to come from the travelers themselves. They have to say, listen, we want X, Y, Z. I mean, I remember there was a couple I met when I was in Zimbabwe traveling, and I was staying at the African bush camps, and it was founded by a Black man. His name is Bexon Ndlovu, and I stayed there at his camp for about 3 weeks. And I met an Australian couple, and they said to me they specifically chose that camp, or they specifically chose ABC because it is founded by a Black man. They wanted to support someone who actually is from Africa. And I had a conversation with him about it, and I said to him, what do you think about this? And he said, I get it completely. As Africans, we need to bring in the community more, and not just on the grassroots level, not on the ground level. It needs to really, grow and stem into other parts of the business and parts of the industry. And I think that's what we need to do. And, the thing is, I'm trying to do that with travel coaching. I'm trying to do that with travel writing. But it's a slow journey. I mean, that's the thing. I know you're aware of it as well, is it's all well and good for the Black community and people of color to have that conversation, but we need the allies as well to get on board and to make the change with us.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, because the tourism industry is a big economic driver for a lot of countries around the
Yes.
world. And there are big top dogs in the industry, and it's all driven by money and profit.
Yeah.
With that said, that also the change comes from the traveler demand, no matter what that
Yes.
looks like. And that's going to take time, but it has to start
Yes.
somewhere. But the
Yeah.
good news is that at least one of the things that has come from the pandemic and this change in the industry is the buzz about, again, there's a difference between talk and there's a difference between taking action, but at least the conversation is being had of supporting locals and local businesses, or empowering locals to be involved in businesses. And I've seen that, and that's why I like to bring on specific type of guests to the TCN podcast, because they're doing these small little changes, and small changes in a collective can lead to bigger change over time. So
Absolutely.
there again, you as travelers, it's up to you whether that looks like sustainability, all of these different categories that matter to you. If you want a difference made in a big, powerful industry like tourism and hospitality, it's your dollar that matters. Change will happen in
Yes,
these big companies when, as a group, you have that demand for it, because they
absolutely.
want to make money and they want to satisfy you so that you give them their dollars. So it
Yes.
takes time, but at least, I'm excited for the direction of the tourism industry. But I just did a post today just talking about how so much change has happened for and space for innovation and creativity and depth to this industry since the pandemic. And that's one of the good things that came out of it. So I just love hearing stories like you who, share your put your voice out there, share your voice, and, continue to make the path and difference that you're making in the industry, Jabu.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
wonderful. So as we're wrapping it up here, I always love to ask, is there a fun fact about yourself that doesn't have to be business or travel related that you could share?
Yeah, I am an adventure junkie. I love adventure. I love adrenaline junkie as well. I just love doing crazy stuff. Whenever I go to anywhere in the world, I have to do something really crazy. So I've done so much whitewater rafting, bungee jumping. Oh Lord, what else have I done? Skydiving. So I do a lot of stuff. And as well, I when Bear Grylls opened up his survival academy, the first one in Africa. I don't know if it's still there, but it was in Zimbabwe. And he opened it up there next to the Victoria Falls. And I was part of the initial group, the inaugural group. And we survived out in the wild. It was one night and 2 days in the rain. And I learned a lot of stuff. He wasn't there, but he sent a lot of his staff, and we did everything. We had to jump into the Zambezi River, which has a lot of crocodiles. I have this crazy belief. My surname means Ngwenya, which means crocodile. And I have this belief that I will never be attacked by a crocodile because, I'm part of the clan of crocodiles. So yeah, so that's a fun fact about me. I just love to do lots of crazy stuff and I was thrown off a horse and so many things. I love it. I love just going out
Uh,
there.
It sounds like you are living an enriched life full of adventure, and that's what fulfills you, and that's what makes you happy. So, a lot of those
Yeah.
things I will not be doing because my last name does not mean crocodile, and I will not be going into jumping into a river of crocodiles. But please remember that you also are not a crocodile, and that
Yeah.
please be safe. That I mean, those are amazing. I have always wanted to do whitewater rafting. That's on my bucket list to do one day as well too. I just never really got around to do it. But Jabu, also I wanted to ask, like, you've been a part of the Travel Coach Network for quite some time now. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly
Yeah.
how long, but I feel
About
like I've
two
known you for
years.
a really long time.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but and I mean that's just the power of the community that we have.
Yeah.
People have ever all connected and become friends and stuff. But can you share something that the TCN or the certification program has done for you?
I think the biggest thing for me, it was more than just getting the certification. I think it was really just opening up my eyes to honestly my own potential. And when I say potential, I'm not just talking about work-wise. So this goes way beyond just the program. It goes way beyond, being a travel coach and a travel writer. It really is about my own growth as a person. And I know I could never have done the travel coaching program before then because I wasn't ready. I just know I wasn't. And this, it's something that I've spoken to you about before, is that your program really goes into the nitty-gritty of everything about why you want to do it. It asks a lot of questions. And these questions really call you to dig deep and to really try and find out who you are. It's more than just what you're offering to people. It really is also about who you are as a person. And that for me is what the program really did for me, is it really opened up me to me. And the journey hasn't stopped. It's not something, now that I got the certification, I'm like, okay, it's done. No, I think those questions, and the same questions keep coming up again and again in different forums from different people, but it keeps coming up. And sometimes it comes up within myself, where I ask myself a question. And I have to tell you, Sahara, you made me write so much stuff, because I got a lot of stuff saved on my laptop. And sometimes I have to think to myself, where did I save it? I know I wrote it somewhere. And there's so much stuff. Someone will ask me something and say, oh, Jabu, you know what is your core value? And I know I have it, and I know I've written it, and I know I wrote it in such a nice way. And I'm thinking, where can I look for it? Because I know I have it, but I have all these notes. So that's what I have loved, honestly. It isn't just about the certification. It really is about you as a person. And you cannot help anyone if you haven't been, I feel, if you have not been changed by what happened within the program.
Yeah,
So
well, thank you so much. And it's been such a joy having you be a part of the Travel Coach Network. You've been
thank
such a
you.
shining light in this community, and working with you and everything too. And thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast today. Where can
Thank
everyone
you.
learn more about your business and find and follow you?
Okay, so you can find me on the website, on my website. It's www.travelafricawithjabu.com. So that's very easy. And then you can also find me, I'm very active on Instagram, and that will be travel_Africa_with_Jabu. And yeah, you'll find me there.
Perfect. Jabu, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so lovely to chat with you.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this.
Wonderful. And everyone, be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Travel Coach Network. Visit us at thetravelcoachnetwork.com. Come give us a hello. We look forward to having you in our TCN Global Community on Facebook. You can find the link for that and your free beginner's guide to travel coaching in the show notes. You will also find all of Jabu's links that she mentioned in the show notes as well. And if you know anyone who might be interested in travel coaching, please be sure to send them our way to our podcast. We truly appreciate it. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.